I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. On today's video, I want to showcase some of the unique features of the AM4, including gig mode, amp mode, and the channel picker. These allow you to get so much functionality out of 4 blocks on the unit. If you're interested in some other frequently asked questions, I've got a video over on my channel which dives a little bit deeper into some of these on the AM4. But for now, let's dive straight in. Gig mode. Now, this is the default foot switch setting on the AM4 when you unbox it. If we were to go into the setup and navigate over to the second setup page for the foot switches, you can see I've currently got press and hold mode set as gig mode. Now, personally for me, I like having a custom setup over here where you can program the hold function for any function that you like on there. But I think gig mode is super flexible because if we're on the preset layout over here, or any other layout for that matter, if I press these two buttons together, this will take me to the mode selector. So if I've chosen my preset and I want to access the scenes, I can then do that. So I'm on my first preset over here and I've got my scenes set up. What you can see with the way I've laid this preset out is each effect block in here is saved to a different scene with a different channel. Well, all of them except the wah, because I just used the one wah sound. So in this single preset, I've got 4 different amp sounds, 4 different chorus sounds, and 4 different delay sounds on there. And that is one way that this is so much more than just 4 static effects blocks. So I could go through a couple of different amp models on here. If I wanted to change the mode, again, I press these 2 foot switches and this takes me back to the mode selector. If I was on that same scene and I wanted to play around with the effects on here, I would hit my effects layout. This way on, say, this 4th scene where I'm using the Mark series amp, I could toggle my chorus and my delay on and off. I've got an expression pedal hooked up to this preset so that I can auto-engage the wah on any of these scenes as well. In gig mode, and the effects mode over here, if you press and hold any of these foot switches, it will bring up the channel picker. So let's say I take the delay and I press it and hold it. Now I can select between my 4 different delays that I've got in here. Let's have a listen to the surround delay and then the different settings that I've dialed in on the various dual delay blocks. I can do the same thing with any of these effect blocks on here. So I could select a different chorus mode, like the dimension chorus over here. Furthermore, in the amp block over here, again, I've got my 4 different channels, so I could set this up to select any of the amps that I like. But across all of these modes, if I press and hold these 2 foot switches, I enter what's called amp mode over here, where the authentic controls for the amp block are displayed. And then I can toggle through the different channels over here, and it will leave the controls up over here. This is really, really handy. Say I wanted to dial in my FAS Stealth Blue with slightly more gain, I can do that. Then I can come over to my Brit 800 2203 high, turn the gain down for a little more crunch. I could come over to the Euro Blue and let's say I wanted to adjust the depth control over there. I can also go down here and get the EQ controls. On my 4th channel, what I have, the Mark IV lead over here. Again, let's say I just wanted to back the overdrive off a little bit. I could come down here and say, dial in a little bit more bass. And I know you may think I'm insane for leaving the bass on 0 on an amp model, but that's how Mark series amps work. So the amp mode, I think, is really, really awesome on here. Again, being able to not only select your different amps, but have the effect controls up there so that you can instantly dial them in. Another way that this is really nice and flexible, and I think a big workflow improvement over other Fractal units. Finally, if I press the 3rd and 4th button together, I get into the tuner and tap tempo mode over here. So I can set up the tap tempo for my preset and I can tune my guitar. If I hit the 3rd button, it will mute the tuner as well. Now, personally, if I was using this at the heart of a rig, I would probably use an external MIDI controller or an external pedal to have the tap tempo always accessible. That's just something that I need when I'm gigging. But again, being able to be anywhere on this and hit these two buttons to get into that mode is very handy indeed. Another question a lot of you have been asking about is whether you can run the AM4 direct to front of house with a cab sim enabled, while simultaneously running to a backline amp and cab without a cab sim. You can. It's called split mode. We just go to the setup menu over here and we can select between stereo, sum left and right, copy left to right, and the new split mode. So the left output will have the cab sim enabled and the right output will have no cab sim. So you could take that to the effects return of a backline amp or to a dedicated power amp and guitar cab. If you go to the setup menu and page across to MIDI and remote, you can set the MIDI channel, whether you want to receive or send MIDI PCs over here. Then you can set custom CCs for just about any function in here, whether it's bypassing effects, whether it's changing channels, whether it is setting up the scene sync function, which I cover on a video I did with the AM4 and the VP4. And then look at all of these different ways you can control the AM4. You can activate the metronome, the tuner, the effects block bypasses and channels, and have external controls on here as well. So you have the ability to just use these four built-in foot switches if you want, but you could build this into the heart of a very extensive MIDI switching rig. Like imagine this hooked up to something like an RJM controller where you've got like 16 or 24 foot switches to control everything. The effects loop on the AM4 is a hardware insert loop here. So it's not freely assignable. It is placed at the end of the chain. And the thinking with that is, let's say you had a reverb pedal or a delay pedal that has unbalanced outputs. You would place it in the insert loop on here. It would be placed at the end of the chain, but you can still use the balanced outputs on the AM4. So you don't need a separate DI box. Again, the AM4 is really designed to be used with other pedals on here. So you could place, say, an analog wah and drive before the AM4. You could use whatever blocks you want in here. You could place something like a delay pedal or a reverb pedal in the insert loop at the end of the chain and still come out of the stereo outs balanced to front of house. Recap and consolidate what I was talking about with the foot switching mode, effects, and channels over here. So we'll just go through an example. I'm currently on this LT Grease preset number 2. I've got it set up with a phaser, an amp, and a chorus at the moment. If I wanted to swap over to having, say, this preset where I've got the amp, the enhancer, the delay, and a reverb, I can just switch between those two really easily. Now, if I'm in this preset and I want to go to the scenes or the effects mode, in gig mode, I would hit these two buttons. I can select my scenes. Let's say I navigate over to scene 3, which is using the Euro Blue amp model. There's a delay and a reverb on there. Again, I've kind of got this set up for like a Lukather style tone. Once I'm in there, I can hit these two buttons over here and go to the effects layout. And then I can repeat that process if I want to change to another scene or another preset. These two together, I can select my mode over here, or I can go over to the tuner and tap tempo, mute it and tune my guitar, change the tempo of anything that I've got time synced over there. If you've got any other questions or any requests for future Tuesday Tone Tips with the AM4, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll see you all on the next one.